Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
WESN.
What might be, I guess, a decades-old institution might soon come to an end, of course, with what's going on with the breakfast shed. Now, there's a lot of different perspectives on it. I will not necessarily speak right now about all of them. I will say that the whole situation to me seems like a bit of a mess, and perhaps could be a case study of why operating under informal promises and practices, especially when you go up the scale on levels of business. Two private citizens having informal agreements between them, that's their problem. Government having informal agreements to conduct its own business, that could set bad precedents. Because it's a situation where UDICOT is saying, well, they owe us almost $2 million, and the people of the breakfast shed saying, well, that might be nice, but technically you all owe us from 2005. 2005, is it? Almost $6 million or $6 million, because the promised payouts of what should have been $500,000 per cook end up only being 20% of that $100,000 per cook. Now again, I don't know how true this is, what it was, what the payments are for, whatever, right? I don't know what the claim is. It just based on what was reported. Because I didn't follow the breakfast shed situation in 2005. I was now coming out of secondary school. Based on what's reported, it seems as though promises were made, not necessarily in writing, promises were not necessarily kept, but we have to wonder if the arrears and rent were allowed to accumulate because this whole situation was treated improperly. So now comes in new administration who wants to technically do things the proper way, but are they potentially unaware, or they want to disregard what could be patent in history if the people of the breakfast shed decide to take it to court, which they have threatened. Now, I think it's the chairman of UDICOT said there were no eviction notices, they left up their own accord, which is why I found it strange initially when I saw the headline about the lawsuit, but then when it was over money that they believe is owing, it'll be interesting to see if they go ahead with the lawsuit, you know, what evidence they would be able to present to that. I assume their lawyers would be advising them. Hopefully their lawyers are not giving them bad advice, depending on what the evidence is. Maybe they do have written agreements down, in which case, you know, this whole situation, again, it makes it even worse in the sense of, well, we have written agreements that you all didn't honor, but we're not pursuing it, so you're not pursuing your rent, but now they want to pursue the rent, so now we want to honor your written agreements. Meanwhile, how many years has this back and forth been going on? As opposed to, let's do things formally and properly across the board, consistently, right? Because what happens when you have informal arrangements is that when a new administration comes in, if they want to upset the apple cart, they could say, well, we're just enforcing the rules. And then there are the other perspectives, right? We'll get probably into that later on when Karen comes. I don't want to spend too much more time on this, but I just think this could be a case study of why we need to be more professional, be more upfront, be more formal, an official and not just do things kind of willy-nilly. Even if there's paperwork involved, it seems sometimes we do things a little too willy-nilly. Now, stop if you heard this one before. But the United States, they're not necessarily, well, they're noting what one headline reports as a lack of action with regards to human trafficking. And the most recent report, 2025 Trafficking in Persons Report, with regards to TNT, they call out or make mention of corruption, weak evidence collection, witness intimidation. These remain major barriers to investigation and prosecuting traffickers effectively. Corruption and official complicity in trafficking crimes remain significant concerns. Counter-trafficking unit audited 2 investigations, one of which involved alleged official complicity at a detention center, but concluded that the evidence was insufficient for the investigation to proceed. The other investigation involved the alleged complicity of members of parliament and is ongoing. Members of parliament. Very, very careful language because it doesn't technically eliminate one political party or the other. It wasn't members of the government majority, and it wasn't members of the government majority either now or back when the PNM was the majority. They just said members of parliament. It could be majority, opposition, government opposition, whichever time period you're looking at, whichever party's involved or in charge. What's interesting in this situation is when you, one of the other daily newspapers, how they reported it comes across a bit less critical, saying that, you know, we maintain the Tier 2 ranking. That's one way to put it. Now, here's the thing though, maintaining the Tier 2 ranking might not actually be that positive, because it goes on to say, a Tier 2 designated country means the government does not fully meet the minimum standards for the elimination of trafficking, but is making significant efforts to do so. We did not improve our situation. We maintained what is not necessarily a good situation. And goes on to highlight, TNT was upgraded from Tier 2 watch list to Tier 2 when the US State Department said the government demonstrated overall increasing efforts compared with the previous reporting period. This is last year. So the headline is really what people might misinterpret as being somewhat positive-ish. But if you take it in its entirety, when last year, the reports last year said senior government officials, I believe the reports last year said it, as well as the year before, and if that's not true, then it's at least, the very least, 2023 that mentioned senior government officials involved, or involvement, or complicity in human trafficking. Not too dissimilar to the report this year. So, to say that we've maintained things, if you just remember the previous reports, it's not a good place to be. So, budget coming up, Joint Trade Union Movement wants, well, they want the settlement of public servants negotiations and the outstanding 12% wage increase for Port Authority workers. They are also continuing calls from other groups, this is a report, for concrete budget measures to address crime and promote economic diversification. That's nice. That sounds like you want all the things. So dare I say, are you willing to reveal what you would want to tell the government they should prioritize? Your raise and wage increases or spending on diversification? Because it's not going to be cheap. One of the reasons why we haven't done diversification was because it's not cheap. If it was cheap, we would have done it long ago. Diversification will involve, to some extent, a significant degree of capital investment into new industries. So potentially new infrastructure. Of course, there's the opportunity cost with regards to getting committees to set up potentially propose new laws under which These things may require, depending on how new the industry is, right? If it's like a new manufacturer, maybe not so much. If it's a brand new technology, maybe we do. And then to what extent is government infrastructure, not necessarily just roads and water and electricity, because if you have a business that requires a lot of water, you can't just drop it in whatever random community that may or may not have a water supply problem. If the community doesn't have a water supply problem, you might be causing them to have a water supply problem. So of course there's town and country planning and stuff like that. But then there's government infrastructure in the sense of, if we want to diversify, have new industries, what ministries now need to have maybe new personnel, maybe new procedures, maybe new standards, new reporting procedures, new lines of communication, what have you, in order to facilitate this business. Because you don't want to leave it like the Wild West, where we're not involved, you just do your do. Just don't murder nobody and whatever happens, happens. Or you defraud somebody, well, we're not involved. We don't necessarily want that. So, this is the quote with Michael Anna said, we want, ICNTT says, a people-centered budget that speaks to diversification, productivity, efficiency, and training, reskilling workers. Well, none of that has technically anything to do with wage increases. And the problem is, we are not at a point where we could afford all the things. So what are you willing to sacrifice if you want diversification, productivity, efficiency, training, reskilling, as well as 10% settlements, back payments, etc., etc.? And that doesn't even begin to say, all right, and then somebody needs to ensure that we have the funds for the body cameras, get the funds to get the Coast Guard boats back up to spec, maybe get funds to build a new prison, refurbish. Well, they want to close down some of the old prisons, right? So we might need new facilities to be built on that front. If the conditions are that bad, it behooves us, if we're human-centered, to do that. Because not everybody in the prisons is convicted. Some of them are on remand. And not everybody in remand is going to be found guilty. It is what it is. So, TNT Chamber wants crime to be addressed. That's an expense. Do we want drones, body cameras, right? Do we want more digital upgrades for the criminal justice system? The answer to that, in my opinion, is yes. But it's one thing to say that you want it. Now commit the money to do it and not try to do it on a budget. Like what seemingly national security, I'm using that as a broad brush term for all of the elements, but Homeland Security Minister and Commissioner of Police apparently seems like they want to do police body cameras on a budget, it seems. Don't forget, they always every year need to buy more cars and what have you. So, no tax hikes or vanity projects. This is from Jack Warner. No tax hikes might be hard. No vanity projects, that might be hard for the ego. We'll have to wait and see. There could always be a vanity project that might also technically be not just, well, a hospital or an airport. Yes, look how much dividends that airport in Tobago is just paying off on our tourism product. It's so productive. It gets so much business to the island, this wonderful crown jewel of our tourism product, the airport. Look how beautiful it is and so innovative in its design. And look how much people it could facilitate to pass through its walls. Look how much traffic comes through that brand new airport that wasn't finished when it was opened. And all the tourists that needed that brand new airport. All those ghost tourists, I guess. Yeah. Diversification and job creation requires serious investment. And some of the other things that people might want, we might have to give up for this year. Are we going to be willing to do it? I don't think so. Because there's recurring expenditure we can't just drop. maintaining schools, maintaining hospitals, maintaining police and fire stations, maintaining fire engines. We probably need to buy more fire trucks. There's a lot of things that we need to buy new equipment for, not just body armor. But I guess the Minister of Homeland Security, he has his priorities. It'll be very interesting if a police station was to burn down. If all of a sudden, would that then give us a response on getting more fire engines to ensure we have proper coverage? Because I guess the death of an MP was not enough for Parliament to really get its rein in gear. Now I want to go to the property tax situation. I can't remember everything that I said yesterday, but I think this is something that I wanted to see. We had property tax. Not everybody liked the fact that they had to pay a new tax, especially now. I understand that. Local government has been complaining about a lack of money for a long time. Not just UNC local government bodies or UNC-run local government corporations under the PNM. If you read between the lines, the PNM corporations also were not getting as much money as they would like to meet what they think are the things that they should be doing, either to maintain their areas or improve their areas in significant ways that might be more of a necessity than a luxury, right? Depending on how you view it. So the idea is property tax sort of solve that. So then the previous government half-baked property tax. It wasn't finished, but they pulled it out of the oven and they put it in front of us and said, you must consume this, you must engage in this process. Don't mind the fact that they weren't necessarily fully implemented everything to legally compel us to do so, but they were doing a darn good job of suggesting that we have to do it. So some people paid, not everybody. Cool. Then the new government comes in and says the tax is bad, no more tax. Whether they fully repeal it, which I believe they didn't do, or they modify it. We've yet to see. But they stopped collecting money because that was the wicked, evil PNM. We're not going to do that. Oh, but the money that we did collect, yeah, we're going to keep that money. What the money PNM collect? You know, now wicked law, we're going to keep it. And then now, the local governments recently, when they came out and said, well, we didn't receive it, basically, right? I'm kind of paraphrasing the whole situation here, not just any one individual. The current government is saying, well, it's hasty complaints because we never said that we distributed the money. My thing is this. It's already bad enough that you're going to keep the money from a tax that you call unethical or whatever word you want to insert, right? And not refund the money. But then, if you're not necessarily going to use the money for the purpose that it was collected, which, based on what we saw, because it was half-baked implemented, the PNM might have done that. But we don't know for sure in the long run if they would or if they would not. We could speculate. But right now, that's what it seems like the current administration is doing. Or they collected property tax and it said it was for local government, but they didn't give it to local government, did they? Look how bad the PNM was for doing that. But we're not going to give you back the money. The rest of you don't have to pay, but we're not going to give you back the money. And we're not going to give it to local government either. That's the implication, because apparently the money is just there. We assume it's there. We assume it wasn't used for anything, because I don't think it was reported to have been used for anything. Given the fact that the government is pinching pennies because even body cameras, oh my gosh, $24 million for body cameras, that's too expensive. For a whole body camera system, that's too expensive. Brand new, $24 million to ensure that accusations of police misconduct and police violence being unjustified, $24 million, that's too expensive for that. The integrity of the police service, $24 million is too much money to protect the integrity of the police service. The integrity of police officers, $24 million is too expensive to protect the integrity of the police service. It's almost like if it's a Freudian slip to say that the police service has no integrity, so why are we bothering to spend money to do so? And I say this only because, based on comments, based from what I understand, based on my own speculation, it could be that they're not necessarily making an efficient economic decision, but more like a cheapskate economic position. Just because the numbers are smaller doesn't mean that it's a better value for money. And doing police body cameras on the cheap. But hey, if $24 million for body cameras is a bridge too far, $130 million, they don't want to give up. I'm sure they can find a lot of uses for that money. It just stinks to me. It feels very disingenuous to me that if you went on a platform to say we're getting rid of this tax, but we're going to keep the money collected from the tax, how are you necessarily any better than your political opponents on this issue? I won't say overall, but on this issue. And there could have been a way to explain all of this if you used your words and leadership skills and communication skills, because I'm assuming you have it. That might be too much of an assumption, but prove me wrong. All right. Last thing I'll say is this. Guyana has a good point on the whole situation with regards to the presence of the United States. They are not gung-ho about it. They're going in eyes wide open, apparently. That's the quote, right? Some Caribbean leaders may view the U.S. military buildup positively. Locally, we could say that, our leader. Guyana recognizes that the situation requires careful examination. Now, that potentially sounds like he wants to go in a different direction. I would say not necessarily, because then he goes on to quote, the zone of peace is not only about threats to borders, it's also about threats that we are now seeing. Drug trafficking, illegal immigration, the use of international waterways for transshipment. So, every single day the Venezuelan government attacks me personally, attacks this country. This is Irfan Ali. They say the worst things about us. They also say bad things about us too, which is kind of laughable, which is why I believe we don't really take most of it on. But we have never responded in a hostile way. We responded with facts and truth. What is needed is a meeting of minds, a meeting to share intelligence and to share information. So a full understanding of what is at stake here for all of us. And I think he's basically saying all of the commentary that we get from various leaders and stakeholders, maybe including mine, he's saying, hey, all of this is premature, not necessarily useful, potentially inaccurate, and potentially unnecessary. Half-baked, potentially. Because, and now I will put my interpretation, a lot of what we see in the press over this issue is oversimplification. But I'll leave that there. I didn't really necessarily want to go into it because the situation is more or less hasn't developed significantly any further compared to when it started. And when I say it started, as to when the ships actually arrived, not when the ships were in transit and people started to get on from the jump. But we'll see. I'm still waiting to see exactly how it will unfold. The Americans are playing this close to the vest, and even the Dragon situation, I don't think is a outright clue of where they lean one way or the other. They've done a very good job, I think, of keeping things, their intentions hidden, but we'll wait and see. Let's take a break. When we come back, the good lady is here. Stay tuned. This is Talking About WSN. We'll be right back after this.
My name is Dr. Joanne Williams Carroll, and I am I'm the Director of Behavioral and Mental Health at the Community Hospital. At the Community Hospital, we believe in nurturing mind, body, and soul. Through our counseling and chaplaincy program, we will provide you with support and strength you need to help with your mental and emotional well-being.
Give us a call.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness Unlocked, the series that brings expert advice and real solutions for a healthier you. In our latest episode, learn how Jameson CoQ10 can help support heart health, boost energy, and even reduce migraines. Get the science, the stories, and the steps to power up your health with CoQ10. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on
WESN
and start your wellness journey today.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title. It's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward and our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions with your money? Decisions that secure your future, protect your family, and bring you peace of mind. I'm Darren Jacobs, and I'm here to help you make sense of your dollars. Welcome to Dollars and Cents, the show that breaks down the financial world in ways that matter to you. No jargon, no confusion, just real conversations about money, your money. So join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on WESN for Dollars and Cents.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug.
You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we cannot have a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
right,
or the man who's being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
I'm back here on talking about WSND Connect after show. Michael Small, now joined by the good lady herself, Karen Eshishera, former attorney at law, not former Minister of Finance.
That's okay.
Still an attorney at law.
That's
well,
all right.
Still a legal scholar.
Okay.
Still an author of textbooks. Still a contributor on Talking Point. Karen, good morning.
Good morning to you, Sean. So we had a little conversation leading into my coming on the show. Good morning to everyone. I'm always happy to be here with you. I look forward to this, actually. Maybe it's the teacher in me, I suppose. But in any event, we usually, as I said, talk about what we're going to speak about in this program. But today's newspaper headlines caused me to ask that we look a little bit at the headlines, which seem very promising, but has to be taken in context. And what am I speaking about? Speaking really about the headlines, which said that Prime Minister Kamala Bissessar, I think in the Express, has secured, used very strong words, secured the Dragonfield deal. I don't know if I could read that much into the statement coming on behalf of Mr. Rubio, because when I looked at the statement and read it, it said that, of course, I think, I didn't bring my computer today, apologies for that. But when I read the statement that was issued, it said, yes, they're working favorably in assisting Trinidad in securing the gas from Dragonfield, which is critical for us, because our issue is not only price, over which we have no control, but a major issue is the production issue. So that's that, and that boosts our revenue. What did she say?
It says the Secretary of State supports the approval of the relevant Office of Foreign Assets Control licenses to begin discussions towards developing its cross-border hydrocarbons, right? Which is a lot, like it's multiple layers of non-committal language, right? And more importantly, I think the reports also say that it is still a criteria if this deal were to happen that I believe financially, I'll paraphrase, financially, the Venezuelan government under Maduro does not benefit, or at least does not benefit in certain ways, which I think that's the cold water on the whole celebration. And as much as Stuart Young wants to say, oh, look, you see, it's, you know, you're right back where we started. To some extent, he's correct, but the reality is this is not a done deal, right? And for the same reason why we said it was dead long before Kamala said it was dead, it still kind of looks to not really be a practical deal right now.
And that's where I take issue with the headline,
Right.
which says that she has secured it. So I looked at it, I said, oh my goodness, now I understand even more why she was taking that strong pro-American position and made no bones about it, including her speech in the United Nations. So, but when you read it, it's not saying anything really. And then what is very telling is the part that says that, you know, Venezuela is not to benefit. Well, Venezuela is their gas. I mean,
it says the statement apparently has emphasis on the support for the disruption of narcotic networks.
Well, I mean, that's
right?
why, I mean, you've got to say that.
Right, no, but I mean, say what you just said there about how Kamala's vocal support for the American operation might have had a part to play in the willingness, the quid pro quo. You do something for me, we'll do something for you, maybe. But again, it doesn't seem like it's going to actually go all the way.
Well, my take on that would be more to say that everybody has to look after their own country. This is why, for example, with Venezuela, even though some say that Maduro did not win the election, or the Supreme Court did validate it, just as how the Supreme Court of America did that when Gore versus Bush with that state that was in contention, Florida. The reality is that what governments tend to do is try to unite people against on a common cause. So for Venezuela, the common cause would claiming part of Ghana as being part of theirs because of the arbitral award not being valid. So in the case of Trinidad, what are the two number two items in terms of the elections and so on is economy and crime. So I think she should get, regardless of what side of the fence you sit on, that one would expect that she would get support, even if maybe you disagree with the extent to which she has articulated that. But people will support her in relation both with the crime initiative as well as with the economy, because we all know that Dragon Fee was critical to us. So you have to read everything with a tablespoon of salt, and on top of that, it's a developing story. And I know enough to say that there are things that may be going on behind the scenes of which we have no knowledge. But what I will say on this, the headlines by the Express was hyperbole of the, I mean, it's so exaggeration beyond exaggeration.
Optimistic?
No, it was exaggeration.
Okay.
It was absolutely exaggeration. You cannot say that she secured it. She did not secure anything. Right? So do not put that as a headline. And people, all the time, people go with a headline and don't go further. Right? So do not do that. And on top of which, when you read what was said, how are you going to achieve this objective if you say Venezuela is not going to benefit? So how is that going to happen? It's their oil. I mean, their natural gas.
Yes.
How is that happening?
They still have to agree.
But there we go. And then when after, and so the point I'm making is even Stuart Young, I mean, please, Stuart, you know, it's no better than what she had to say, actually a little worse. He said that we don't wish to harm Trinidad. That's the best you got out of Rubio. What does that mean? Yeah, you might be a casualty of a war. We're not going to be there to hurt you, Trinidad, but we are there to get control over Venezuela, which has the largest crude oil reserves. Plus you have ExxonMobil operating right in Guyana, and all of those considerations and going on. So what do you mean you didn't do any better? Okay, she got a little bit more from them. But what does that mean that Venezuela is not going to benefit? You have to tell me what that means, because when Trump came in, President Trump came in, and everyone knows he's a very mercurial, I mean, that is part of his playbook or play thing, that's part of it. He succeeds on that. But it's also very, it's not good for an economy or a country to have that level of uncertainty, because you never know what he's going to do next. Okay, so that when he speaks like that, you can't take that to the bank, you know. So I've said enough on that to say that I hope that it does materialize. I very much hope so. Can I say it's materializing now? No. Can I say that Stuart Young made any more headway? Absolutely not. In fact, he made less headway than
the words from the American government time didn't seem to be
not at all.
As much as it's non-committal now, it seemed even less committal then.
But it's non-committal still.
Right, exactly.
Still non-committal.
And you're the one, just so people understand, I'm not bringing this up to say, oh, look how smart I am. I don't want to put me onto this. The logistics of Dragon is so much better than the logistics of trying to go with anything in Grenada, anything in Guyana or Suriname. Just the distance, the complexities of international borders.
Oh God, it's too many things.
Yeah, like it's just so much easier to do Dragon than any other international deal on the table right now, correct?
Not only is it so much easier, it's really impractical. Ghana said they're not interested. They are building, from my understanding, they already had a small natural gas facility which provided Brazil, which borders Ghana, with electricity, and they were building an even larger facility with the natural gas further in the interior with the same objective. So they don't need what they need with us. What do they want with us? I mean, you know. So, and then the pipeline to build a pipeline. So we could go on and on about it. The fact of the matter is, Dragon Field, with how many trillions cubic feet of natural gas, and Lorin Manatee, with most of the gas field in the Lorin on the Venezuelan side, was critical to us. When President Trump came in, he revoked all the licenses, but the licenses weren't very long term. And if you're an investor like Shell and BP, especially Shell, who is the company that's behind the Dragon Field, and I think Lauren too, but definitely Dragon Field, as an investor in Shell, you would not like to deal with this uncertainty, because that's what you're getting from the United States, and they hold the ball, they hold it. And right now, you know, we're really in the, we are caught in the crosshairs. So why am I raising? Well, I'm raising that because the initial conversation that I intended to start with, but then it leads in sort of to that, is the question of what Mr. Philip Alexander, Minister, let me correct myself, Minister Philip Alexander had to say regarding Venezuela relationship with Trinidad and India. And I mean, my goodness gracious me.
Well, we have the clip.
Oh, yes.
It was a long video, so there was more to it than this, but this is the stuff that's reported and the stuff Karen wanted to address directly. So if we could play the clip. We have the clip, right, guys? Okay.
Boy, listen to me, eh? Let me tell you this. You think America is your only problem? Modi come here to show Trinidad and Tobago that one of the most powerful nations in the world have Trinidad in its hands. The diaspora, those who are gonna hurt you this morning, it got bunny in your belly. Trinidad is part of the Indian diaspora. Trinidad has more people of East Indian descent in it than any other race. They got bunny you all wrong by your navel. Oh God, Philip, don't say it now. Let me pretend Trinidad is a black country, because that's what they want to tell you. That's what the 1% want to tell you, to incite you to violence, to make you believe that somehow them getting rich, somehow that cabinet that included 0 black people was somehow a PNM, was somehow a black party. Eh? They don't want you to know that the largest group of people in Trinidad and Tobago are of East Indian descent. And Trinidad and Tobago is part of the East Indian diaspora. And Modi and India have us held gently in the palm of his hands, and he will nuke Venezuela. You think it's Trump alone you're dealing with? Touch Trinidad, they'll see.
Of course, it was an hour long. There was more to it. I personally, and this is, I was telling Karen off air, some of the things he said in the context that he said it, with how he led up to it, made no sense to me. Part of it, I guess, Karen, is when you think about the statement, and if you try to assess it as as academically almost, right? As a piece of writing, or in this case as a script. At times it seems very incoherent, all over the place. It's like a rant, it's off the top of the head, it's off the cuff, and that goes into potentially what you want to say about it, in that it might be revealing things behind the scenes. We didn't, I know that we're kind of late with regards to it, but we didn't address it yet because this happened, I believe, the reports on this only came up after the stories came out just before the show, but we had other things to talk about. And the thing is, this kind of thing, you could probably find other points in his social media posts quite like this. It's a long thing. I listened to most of it. But yeah, I'm still left kind of, because the follow-up was basically him saying, let's move on from it, as though he just wanted to sweep under the rug and not really kind of acknowledge the level of controversy he started with what he said.
Okay, so yes, I have a different take on it, and it's my opinion, but I don't think my opinion is without substance or basis. So let's start with the first part, where he talked about about India nuking Venezuela, and Venezuela will come and nuke. India will come and nuke Venezuela. Well, we know that's not true, because as I said, I don't have my computer with me today, but there came out in the headlines several articles showing that India had entered into, as it had before, but more so now with the tariffs imposed by the United States, that they were turning to other sources. And definitely Venezuela is a good source with this crude oil, and that they have increased their trade agreements, energy agreements, a number of agreements. So that flies in the face of what Philip Alexander was saying. So that deals with that piece of, well, and by the way, he said it behind a UNC background, so it's no question he was saying it.
Well, it was like, I think it's his background, and it had PP,
it does not matter.
But the symbol was on it.
There we go. Yeah. Let's not, go into minutiae and so on. Let's go and see what his intent was. That's what you have to look at, the intent, right? And the intent was two purposes. One, to show that Trinidad had a great friend in India, and India would stand up against Venezuela. So Venezuela is the arch enemy, right? And that part, the Prime Minister was very quick to tell him to stay in his lane, more or less, and he was out of line. And she gave a kind of it wasn't a threat, but she said, something to the effect, well, let's see if he complies.
She didn't agree, I believe is what
she said. No, but she not only didn't agree, she also said to him that he was out of line to say that, and that she will look to see how it goes from now on. And I took that to mean that she is saying, you better watch what you say in the future, because you are putting yourself at risk as a minister, okay? She took exception to that. Now, the part that I wish to speak on, and that is the part that is very, very worrying, is the part where he talked about who is the majority in Trinidad now, how it burning in your belly, it burning in your belly. Look at the kind of, I'm not even burning, burning in your belly, burning in your belly. Now the Indians are the majority. What talk is that? Well, let me tell you what that talk means. And I did not know. I have to say that I don't know if the Prime Minister was criticized or stood away from, distanced herself from all of what he said, because there's two elements there. The Venezuela part, clearly she would not want him to do that, because she knew she was meeting with Marco Rubio when she went up to the United Nations, and she certainly did not want to create more enmity, sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, with Venezuela that already existed, right? So it was not in her interest, because at the end of the day, Venezuela has to agree to provide us with the gas. You can't, unless you're going to overtake Venezuela's government and put in a other government that is pro-United States, which, that's all, that's something that we can't even want to consider. The point is, you need Venezuela to agree. So she knew that she could not do that, knowing what she had in plan, and which is something good for us, by the way. I'm supporting her with that. She had to do that. So that deals with that. But I'm not sure if she condemned the other part of his speech. And that's a very, very serious thing for him to have said. And you could say he was a minister. He's not Philip Alexander, the influencer, Philip Alexander who shoots out his mouth.
The independent.
Yeah, whatever he wants to call himself. He is a minister in her government, and therefore holding that that portfolio, we have to assume that at least what he says reflects the views of others in his cabinet, and it's not unfair to come to that realization. And maybe, as he usually does, he speaks before he thinks, and therefore he thinks he could say what he wants because he's gotten away with it, and he forgot where he was. And that is the key. And I did not hear her condemn that specifically, and she needed to specifically distance herself from that. And the reason I'm going to say why even more so in 1 second, but the reason why I'm even focusing on that is because when her PRO, Kirk Megu, made his first statement about independence, saying that Grantley Adams was our first prime minister, I mean, it was so ludicrous. So ludicrous. But you know, they say the more something is crazy, is the more people believe it, because they say it has to be true. That's Goebbels and all of them, all these propaganda machines. That's how they do it. They tell you the bigger the lie, the more people believe it, because they say, well, it has to be true. So when he said that, my recollection is, yes, she did not stand with him on it, but she acted in a very dismissive way, like, you know, that's Kirk talking. So the next time you talk about Republic Day, carrying on, he's continuing in that trend. The next time he signs it, I'm speaking on my behalf. But please, Kirk Megu, even if you want to say that to us, you know that most people who read that will believe you're speaking on behalf of the UNC. And I didn't see her say anything about that. So that brings me to the point about what Philip Alexander said. And it's very revealing. You have to look, go behind the words, because listen, if you don't pay attention to these things, one day you will wake up. You will wake up. Mark my words, you will wake up. And no, it is not everybody wins in this country. It is not that. And why do I say that? Because when I was in government, Mr. Manning, as the Prime Minister, said, and he was very concerned, he said, you know, I don't want Trinidad to come like Fiji. I don't want us to reach the position of Fiji. And at that time, I didn't understand it very well. So that was one of the reasons why he said he expanded all the opportunities for education in terms of medicine, letting private institutions offer the degree in law, expanding the intake of students in law, in medicine, in all the professions, and so on. Because he was very mindful of that happening here. And what happened in Fiji? What happened in Fiji? First of all, what happened in Fiji is that, I think in 1879, Fiji was still a colony of Britain. And Britain brought in a number of indentured laborers from India with the intention that at the end of the indentureship, they would return to India. They did not. And what happened between 1957, middle 1950s to 1987 or thereabout, the majority of the population was no longer the indigenous Fijians, but now it was they're telling me to shift. Oh, God. I don't know what they want me to do. Yeah, it was no longer the indigenous Fijians, but it was now the Indo-Fijians. And that created a race riot in 1987. And in fact, things were so bad because what was happening, because it's a democracy, like ours is a democracy, if you have the majority, they had the control of the parliament, they had control of nearly everything in the country, and it caused, that was not the only race riot, but that was the major one. And that caused the Indo-Fijians to leave in great numbers, go to Australia, United Kingdom, and Canada, not back to India though. They all left, and so that the numbers then returned to the Indo-Fijians being the majority. But in 1990, they passed a constitution. Just imagine they had to go that far. A constitution that stated that the Prime Minister would have to be indigenous Fijian, that the indigenous Fijians would have the majority in Parliament, that there would be specific provisions in terms of employment in every area. Could you imagine putting that into a constitution? That is what happened there. And I think by 2000, they had another constitution in 1997, which sort of balanced it a little bit, but it still had that as its focus. Do we want that in Trinidad? We don't want that in Trinidad. And I'm saying to you that Patrick Manning brought that to our attention years ago. So it's not something I'm pulling out of a hat. It's something that he was concerned about. And for Philip Alexander to come out and say in a very harsh, crass way, leaving no question, they're the majority now, Indian is the majority, take that in there, let it burn you in your belly. What is that about? So, you know, that leads me to my final point on it. And, you know, people could say what they want, but I am not the one starting it, you know. Don't start it because I will answer. I am not going to go in a little corner and say, let us not say anything, it'll make you so unpopular, people don't want to hear. I am saying it because I don't want to happen to Trinidad what happened to so many countries where people turned a blind eye and did not want to accept what they saw coming down the pipeline. And I'm saying that because you have to understand those words that he spoke, you have to take what he's saying and take it seriously. Take it seriously because the newspapers and the media did. Sean said it's an hour long, but out of the hour long talk,
yeah, they got that one.
Right, and they knew what they were doing. So don't say that I, Karen Teixeira, are now wanting to focus on. I didn't focus on that guy. I didn't even know he spoke for an hour, to tell you the truth. I did not know. So what I pulled out is what the media highlighted, and they understood the implications of what he has said. And why do I, this is the point, I'm now coming to the final point on that. You see, the problem with the Prime Minister, and I say that with no apologies, I will give her credit for dealing with the crime, no question about it. You may have your concerns about the police killings. You might have concerns. I do certainly. I also have economy. I think this move with Dragonfield, if it does come to pass, it's an excellent thing for Trinidad. So I do not want anyone to misunderstand me. ExxonMobil, oh my goodness. ExxonMobil, that's for another day. But ExxonMobil, they have one of the worst and well-earned, if that is not an oxymoron, well-earned, terrible reputation globally. And they earned it, they earned it, they earned it. And so to do business with them on every single level is very, very concerning. As I'm sure people read this thing about America saying they didn't pay tax. Could you imagine the Guyanese government, Kaito News published it, that clause 15 of the agreement said that the the Guyanese government would pay their taxes for them? That's just, anyway, I'm going to deal with that on another day. So coming back to the point that I'm saying on that point, but you can't expect success. You cannot expect trust and confidence. That's the key to anything in an economy. If your words do not support your actions, and you cannot say that you do not know what is going on. Let's start the latest one. You see, he's just eating away, you know, eating away, and people don't realize it. They say, well, you know, and anytime you eat away at something, you always have people who will say, well, you know, yeah, I can understand that. Don't understand it. Do not understand it. Breakfast shed. Now, even when I was a minister, to be honest, I used to look through the window and say, my God, that place is not well maintained. It needs to be better maintained. But that's not the point. The head of the UDCOT, which happens to be consistent with nearly every single appointment, nearly every single board appointment. The chairman and vice chairman are almost a man, are Hindu Indians. I wanted them to put up a montage of it so you don't listen to what I'm saying, you know, don't take my word for it. The last one was Exim Bank. Well, everybody, not one person was not East Indian. What? You watch that boards carry out government policy. What are you saying? That if you're not Hindu Indian, you're either incompetent or untrustworthy. So why did you go up with this thing about when we win, everybody wins? Everybody is not winning. Everybody is not winning, and you are staying silent. Somebody, a reporter, needs to ask her about those board appointments. Let her answer it. I want to hear her answer. I want to hear her to be able to defend those appointments, right? And it cannot be that the PNM did it. First of all, I don't think they did it, so, I mean, this is beyond. But apart from that, you said this was a new era. You were bringing in a new era. So don't tell me about what the PNM did. I want to know what you are going to do and what you said you were going to do. And that flies in the face of what you promised. So that's a big, big one. And then, as I said, the breakfast shed. I mean, is this the minister, the chairman saying, oh, he didn't eject them. They just have to pay $2 million in rent and so on. Come on, you know, what is that about? You know, even Robert Lahan wrote an article about it and saying that's iconic, and it's people who, the poor, the persons who struggled, and it has meant so much to Trinidad and Tobago, and you understand its importance, don't you? You do understand it. And then CPEP, I see they're coming with this argument, which sounds pretty good, disguised employment, which is the CPEP issue that they're taking them to court. That is the government taking them to court. And that's another thing. As soon as you came in there, you didn't wait 2 months, 3 months, and you put 11,500 people, the most at risk, the most vulnerable in our society, who happen to live along the east-west corridor in the main, put them on the breadline and with no date to start up. using that you have to do audits. But did you have to do audits between 2010 and 2015 when you were there? Why you didn't do it then? Because maybe you didn't have the majority then. And that's what I am thinking. I'm sorry if I think that, but you feel emboldened. You feel emboldened to take steps that go absolutely contrary to what you promised to do. The National Gas Company ending their sponsorship of 3 steel bans, but my understanding, they have not ended their sponsorship of a TASA ban, which I'm happy for, by the way, and a cricket team, which I'm happy for, by the way. But you see the picture that is emerging, and don't think. So I think I had mentioned some other examples where you have to be concerned about, and when, I'm trying to think back because I can do it right in front of me, but I think what I had said at the time, if I remember, looking at some of the CPAP workers, the National or the Independence Day and Republic Day celebrations, and the most recent thing with Breakfast Shed and Exim Bank. So I think that there is reason for concern, and I think unfortunately, given what slip of the tongue is no fault of the mind, I think Philip Alexander gave us an indication why, in spite of why you came out and said you had learned from your mistakes, you apologized to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, you were going to do things differently, and people believed you, that he feels emboldened to say what he said, because he knows, just like Fiji, that is what is going to happen in Trinidad. So it would not matter whether we had the majority or not. And anybody come out and criticize me, you could criticize me as you want. You could say what you want, but I am telling you, I am saying to you that that is not something you need to discard or say there's no merit in it. Because remember, 5 years from now, those who are 13 will be 18. Right? So even if you're saying the majority, but some of them are still can't vote, in 5 years' time, they will be able to vote. And if we use Fiji as an example, then we have to understand better why the Prime Minister feels, in my respectful opinion, emboldened to act contrary to what she said, that and they win, everybody wins. Not looking so, Madam Prime Minister.
And I'll say this to those that don't necessarily want to disagree with, or they want to disagree with.
Yeah, they want to disagree.
Think about the level of communication the government had before it was elected and just after. And I found that what I appreciated, one of the reasons why I felt positive about the situation was it was more professional, there was more consideration with what they said, how they say it, the tone, the selection of words, the selection of messaging seemed to be coherent, it seemed to be unified and unifying. And now, at the end of the day, Philip said a lot of things, some of which you'll get in rum shop talk. Some of which you could maybe utilize. People might speculate about the PNM, the 1%. I get that. But let's put it this way. He put words in the mouth of the Prime Minister of India. He put words in the mouth of the American government, right? Saying how they will defend us. Well, what does that mean? He went on to say they will nuke you, right? How responsible is that to say? That's, as Karen said, she had to admonish him. Because they're supposed to be our allies, you speaking for them? Who authorized that? But think also now, because some people might just want to say, oh, he's just speaking off the cuff and he doesn't mean that by it and it's not that serious. But my thing is this, why put yourself in that position? And then on top of that, what Karen says is look at the wider context, because Dr. Mayhew, as the PRO of the UNC, is saying, no, this is just my views, while he's using the same channels that he would use for official UNC communication. So to what extent should we be content that it is limited to just him with regards to Dr. Williams, and Philip's views are limited to just him, right? That Republic Day and the political history of the country, what Dr. Mayhew says is only him. And with regards to the situation that Philip is claiming, let me put it that way, it's limited to only him because he's bringing up race in a way. Listen, I understand that having talks about race, you're going to need to be able to speak about uncomfortable things, but you don't need to make it more uncomfortable than necessary by doing it like this, right? And first of all, I didn't see the memo where all of a sudden we were 60% Indian. to say that we have a
He said that?
No, but my point is, like, do we have a clear majority? I don't think so, right? So to bring that up, I don't necessarily even know, well, I say this in the literal sense of, not the literal sense of the word, but somewhat rhetorically. I don't know why he would say it, because to me, it doesn't seem to be the best way to affect what he may want to affect. So, I am someone that had hope for Mr. Alexander. I do wish that he would limit the bombastic rhetoric, because potentially if he did that, he would be able to be a more effective member of the current administration and a leader in TNT. People listen to his words. That's why he has to be careful what he says and be responsible for what he says. Because at the end of the day, I think what Karen said, it goes back to something along the lines of what I have said. This is how he is accustomed to operating. So for him to just switch 100%, right? It might be human to error, but he's at a point where we can't just take on or allow for normal human error. We're talking about running the country. It's why people look at the Minister of Homeland Security and saying, well, we need somebody that's more than just a police officer, right? And I do think that our politicians, how they operate, is not really practiced for government. It's practiced, what? To win their party. The internal bacchanal and the backstabbing, and how they communicate with each other, and how they communicate with their rhetoric to the party faithful, who will absorb certain things differently than the national public. And this, to me, this is what Karen said. It's a social media personality that is coming out here, when what we really needed was Philip Edward Alexander, the statesman, which we kind of saw a bit of on the campaign trail. Why did this have to come out now? What was so pertinent for it to come out now? And in part, because it doesn't make sense.
It does make sense, actually.
Well, no, well, what I mean to say, for normal people, it doesn't make sense. For straightforward people, it doesn't make sense. That actually, to me, is a potential sign that what Karen is saying, there might be more truth to it than that, because that's one of the few ways that it potentially can make sense. Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
I just want to say, because so I don't want to lose my focus on that point. So I led in with the Dragon Field, and then I went to Philip Alexander's statement. I think one of the things we give Philip Alexander a pass, because he's known to be a bit bombastic and say what he wants. So people sort of expect that kind of, you know, that kind of language, but do not underestimate the gentleman. He's a very smart guy. And therefore, when he says it, there's a tendency perhaps to people to say, well, you know, that's how Philip talks. No, it's not how Philip talks.
Exactly.
It's not, and that's why it's more dangerous. You have to understand, and I'm saying that because, well, anyway, I feel very strongly about it, because there is a tendency to make light of it. Oh, Philip's talking, and he forgot himself for a moment. No, he did not forget himself for a moment. He was saying what he really felt. He was expressing what he really felt. He's nobody's fool. Understand that. He's expressing how he felt. And that is why I am confident, I may be wrong, but I will say this, and this is the message that I want to take out of what my opinion on the matter is this. This is my point. When you look at the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister runs this country. When you look at the Prime Minister's responses to things that are said, when you look at the actions of her government over which she has the final say, there's no board that is going to be appointed unless she agrees to it. There's no board, right? That's not happening. The CPEP and URP, that wasn't happening unless she signed off on it. Just as how she signed off on TTRA for different reasons. There's no board that's going to do anything unless the Prime Minister, that's the system we have, that's our constitution, that gives the Prime Minister of our country the ultimate power. So do not get caught in the weeds and get caught up with what Philip Alexander and be dismissive and say, oh, you know, he's a little bit of a loose cannon. No, I am telling you this. You look, and that's what people do not, in my respectful opinion, they do not connect the dots. You have to connect the dots and do not look at them in isolation. Look at her responses. And the reality is, and this is my view, that he felt emboldened, and that's the word I'm using, to say what he said because he understood in a democratic country like our constitution, democracy, every vote counts. And who runs the country is the party who gets the most votes. And what he's saying, and he did not say it to us, you know, he also said it to the PNM, the party. So he's telling the party that you no longer have the numbers, because the obvious implication is that the UNC does, and you don't anymore, right? And that is hurting you. And that is a very telling statement. And you cannot dismiss it as Philip Alexander talking off the top of his head, because he's nobody's fool. I know that for sure. And he lost for a moment. He was so empowered and so lost himself for a moment that he said what he should not have said, which probably is what many people may be thinking anyhow. But he articulated it. And why I am using that as an example, and I'm telling Trinidad and Tobago, please do not be taken in by words. Words are cheap. Do not be. What you have to look at, you have to look at what the Prime Minister's response to Kirk Megu, right? What was she responding to with Alexander? Was it the Venezuela or the majority point that he was clearly focusing on, and the media reported that? And then you have to look at the fact that what has happened since everybody win, this talk about everybody win, it is inconsistent with what we are seeing. The last being the breakfast shed and the Exim Bank appointment. It is just one, and you just see the pattern. It's not, and you know what I don't understand about it, and I'm being very direct about it. I don't understand why she's doing that. Why are you squandering all your goodwill? I don't care. I mean, you might have ministers there, toting feelings, as we like to say in this country, right? Who have a lot of anger and resentment, and they using, I think to some extent, I may be wrong, but there are certain ministers, like which happened to her in the past, that she relies on them. And they give her strength, and for whatever reason. I mean, I could say that as a person in politics, you can always buy competence, but you can't buy loyalty. So a person like her who went through a terrible situation where they were actually saying that as long as she stays there, they will never win, how this and that, and people believed it. And yet there were people who probably stayed in her corner, and she values that loyalty, and it's understandable. But it looks as though they're exercising too much influence over her, because what she has said to us, that's who we're listening to, you know, not the wannabes MPs, you know. We're listening to you. And what you said and what you have done flies in the face of what you have said. And you are not a weak woman, but you are depending. You clearly depend on a few members of your government. And they're the ones running the country when it comes to that, so it appears. When it comes to giving the impression that it is our time now, and not even, I'm going to be direct. If I'm wrong, tell me the facts this are contrary to what I'm saying. You could go and manufacture it and twist it up and package it how you want, but the facts are stubborn things. They do not go away. And it seems to me very clear, not only are you projecting for the East Indians, but it is the Hindu East Indians and not the Muslims. That is how it comes across. And for those who get mad with me, that is so, I've said what I have to say, and let this be a note of caution. I hope I am wrong, but I don't think so.
The thing is, with what was said on these things, if you disagree with it, right, if you think that they're wrong, if left unchallenged, narratives have a way of being perceived to be reality if left unchallenged for too long. And I agree with what Karen said, because I had a similar thought to you. In the context of how this new administration was formed, this is 2.0. We're not making the same mistakes as last time. I was under the impression that there will be no loose cannons this go around, right? So to say that these people are doing independently and whatever, because even Philip said, the Prime Minister, when he was appointed, spoke to him and said, be careful what you say, right? With regards to Saddam Hussein, he was told at times, stay in his lane, and he admitted it. And I was like, because understand, not only is it good that she told her ministers these things, but that they were, one, following through and listening to her, and two, they were more than humble enough to admit it. Hey, I got schooled by the headmaster, and I'm going to, you know, take my little penance or what have you, or take my little instructions, and you know, I'm gonna try and adhere to it. Takes, you know, it's a lot of character to be willing to admit to these things publicly and not let your ego get in the way. And to me, some of these things now are step backs, because think about the implication now. Race and politics is already an issue. So now if a serious talking point is going to be thrown into the mix to say, well, no, the Indians are really the majority of this country. Like, even if it's true, which I don't think statistically it is, are we now going to is that the level of debate of political discourse? Well, we're the majority, so whatever you have to say don't matter. Think about that for a second.
That's what he means.
So,
that's what he means.
And that is, to some extent now, it arms people. You might want to say, oh, that's not what he meant. But even if he didn't mean it, it arms people who wants to say those things, who wants to carry that banner. That's why I said, be responsible with what you say. You're in a position where common human feelings are not necessarily agreeable anymore, because if you were just a private social media person or a private commentator, and even then there's still responsibilities to society. Even now, I am a private commentator on a private media house that has no conflict of interest with government deals or anything like that, right? I still have to be careful with what I say.
Defamation.
Right? Not even for defamation, because there comes a point where anything that media people say publicly, if the public runs with it.
That sounds like your favorite person.
Yeah, we have a call, guys? I didn't hear anything. Okay, we have Cox on the line, so we'll take the call. We'll open up the phone lines. Claxton Bay, good morning.
Okay, yeah.
Mute your TV. Mute your TV.
Yeah, hi. Good morning, Mr. Sharon and Sean. Yeah, Mr. Sharon and Sean. Once again, Mr. Sharon, you've seen it like it is. I mean, that's how the grown seen it. People seeing that like she just doing everything for Indian people. And like you say, rightfully so, maybe like, you know, I just can't understand how a lot of us just stay calm and humble and watching these things just happening in our eyes. Everything she doing is all about India. And you cannot run a country like that. You can't run a country on Indian, and people have to know that. She herself saying this is a cosmopolitan country, right? She herself saying united, but united with what? United with Indians? You cannot do that, and people are seeing that thing plain as ever, right? So we need to have a discussion, and people like you, Mr. Shera, Sean, only need to either step up the game and talk to the Prime Minister, because what she's doing is wrong. That is wrong. You can't run a country like that. The next thing is that we talk about, she talked about the dragon deal was dead. Now she's telling you that the dragon deal is back alive again. Who going to talk to Madura when you say Madura is the biggest cartel? How are you going to mend that? Who's going to mend that problem for us now? You know, like you say, you have to be careful of what you're saying and what you're doing as a country. You're running. She have to remember that. Thank you.
Well, I'll say this. I'm not willing to say that everything.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that
the
either.
administration does is only for East Indians.
No, I wouldn't say that either.
But what I will say though is, and this is why the government, like any institution, public or private, that has public communications, needs to be careful with what they say, because this can be perceived by the public. And here's the thing. So some people say, well, only the haters will view it negatively and take it on. Well, the supporters might also view it. They'll just view it as a positive, right? Regardless, people will perceive it that way, whether they agree with it and they like it, or they disagree with it and dislike it. And once that happens, as much as you might think the positives are for you, no. That narrative will eventually fuel negativity. If not now, down the line.
Not far down, I don't think.
Right, because...
If we continue in this path anyhow.
And that's the thing. The one thing that I find disappointing is I was hoping that we could have been maybe a little bit more, not that it would not exist, but we might be a little bit more over it, right? But it seems that not only are we not over it, and this goes to the fact that how can we have a functional democracy when we have these issues whenever we have transitions? I'm not going to just say it's a UNC thing alone, right? Because some of these things you could say it happens all the time. Once you transition to one to the next, these things that we swap out our people for your people for our people, right? Maybe, you know, at times different administrations within the parties try to put more effort to either appear more diverse or be more diverse, but that is not necessarily a consistent thing, you could argue, right? And sometimes it's just for optics. But regardless, a lot of the instability now, and maybe this is one of the reasons why we are reluctant to vote people out as much as we should, because just the instability of practicing our democracy might be too much for us to bear, and that's sad.
Especially with Standard & Poor's report. I mean, it's not looking very good for us, is it? And in all fairness, I mean, this government has been in government for a few months, and Standard & Poor's, when they made their commentary about looking at outlook as being negative, although they're saying they are going to not revise or change our sovereign rating from what it currently is, they are talking about years. When you read their report and see why they have a negative outlook for Trinidad and Tobago, with a view to re-looking at it within the next 6 and 24 months, it's all about what has happened in the last few years. And so we have to be very mindful that what the state of play now is not a result of this government. In fact, if I had to say anything at this point in time, is that they certainly have made significant inroads in the crime situation. I mean, the figures are there. We may not agree with everything that they are doing, but I certainly they have made an inroad into that, as well as with the well, we'll have to see what goes on with the economy. Dragonfield is a potential, and that's significant for us. And if Dragonfield goes through, that means Lauren Manatee can go through also. So we have to understand that a lot of the positives that we are seeing, or potential positives, in spite of a negative outlook, which is not good, we have to understand that came from the former administration.
We can't assume that the Dragon deal now was in the same position back in March, right? Think about it. A lot of people are saying, why is she kissing up to the Americans so much, right? We have to consider, was that a factor? What other factors could there be, right? As Karen was pointing out, to just go with what Sue Jung said as, oh, well, we could have had this months ago. Probably not. And in fact, again, don't forget, we're saying we're probably not going to have it now anyway. The language just got a little bit nicer, but it's one of those consolation prizes until we see otherwise.
And you know why that is so too? Because with the tariffs, here they have imposed the tariffs of 50%.
Yeah,
we're paying 50% when we export certain of our energy products.
And we have to ask why.
And the
because
post.
The default is 10. So why did we get a little, it's not as bad as others,
yeah,
but why
did
we get a little extra 5%
when we can't afford it, when we cannot, and not only that, the postal, yesterday I went to the post office right here on Western Main Road, and it was closed with no warning. So I went to another one in St. Anne's, it was closed, no warning. And I had to wonder, well, why is this?
What, the St. Anne's post office was closed as well? Yes. As in closed down payment?
Closed for business yesterday.
Wow.
And when, so the reason I'm bringing that up is I'm only speculating, clearly, but I'm wondering whether that has something to do with the removal of the duty-free for for packages exported to the United States that under US $800, you would not have to pay duty. So with all the talk about Dragonfield, when you see they imposing the tariff on a poor little country like Trinidad and Tobago that is so exposed and so fragile as ours is, and also to impose that tariff on us, as well as now remove the duty-free, and you know, that really puts a little bit of a different take on where the Dragonfield deal is going to come.
So there's a comment that we need to address. You say Mr. Manning, but you're calling Kamala she. Now, I don't necessarily know fully what the context
I understand what he's saying. No, I understand what he's saying, and I caught myself saying it, and I said, you know, you should not do that, because I remember from Form 1 in school, my teacher said, one of our teachers said, she says she's the cat's mother. So I agree with you, and I apologize for it. And I did recognize that I did say that. So then I don't know, I did recognize it, but no, I am wrong to have said it. And I should not refer to her like that. I agree with that.
So my take on it is, because I find myself more with Dr. Edith Rowley than anybody else, in the sense of when you're speaking about a subject. Now with Mr. Manning, it's not like we bring him up a lot.
Yeah, but still.
But at some point in time, you're like, to say the whole thing over and over.
Yeah, but still, I don't make any excuses for that. Because I am sensitive about it.
No, right. So I'm saying the psychology is, because I'll catch myself like, oh, I'm shortening his name a little too much.
I think the she is more offensive than the he. I don't know why.
No. In my case, you know, because to me, I think it's like, if you want to say like, Kamala or Rowley, as opposed to Prime Minister or
Yeah, well,
Doctor,
I think that's all right. I mean,
right?
They say Trump in America. I mean, you can't be so sensitive, but I stand corrected on that, because I myself take umbrage to someone referring to her. I do. I personally do, so I take the correction.
I mean, you
rather correction.
I actually think maybe kind of, because I get it. People say Trump, but that to me that's a whole other. That's a whole other, that's a whole different category, right? Because like him or not, especially when he was Prime Minister, now that she is Prime Minister, not to use the full title at times, I feel as though, you know.
But just say the Prime Minister.
I know.
But anyway, it's a difficult thing.
And then now people will say, well, you say Rowley, but you say Kamala, you don't say Keith.
Oh, that's true, and other people have said, but you know what it is? I think, in fairness to people,
I think that's cultural.
No, not. You know, part of it is the endearment people felt towards her, even when she came. Well, I see her say she again. When the Prime Minister, the then Prime Minister
even
waiting.
The last term.
Yes, and they used to say Tanti Kamala, and there was a term of endearment, especially when you put her against Rowley's personality, which seemed unapproachable, rough, and, you know, is very off-putting, where Kamala Prasad came across as being very approachable. So I think when people refer to her as Kamala, I do not think, in my opinion, that they mean it as being disrespectful to her.
Yeah, I do find it interesting, because I think you're right. Referring to Dr. Edith Rowley as Rowley, I don't really see why is that somehow more respectful if you think about it, right? Or when you use
his
it
last
like that.
name.
I know, but
yes, there's a lot in that.
What you said, I think does make sense.
Okay, that's a thing, but there is a big difference. Can I just give you an example?
Okay.
Can I just give you this?
Wait. I was transitioning to San Fernando.
Okay, transition, and I will say the point.
All right, caller, good morning.
Mr. San Fernando.
Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Gary.
Good morning.
It seems as if your regular line only took one call this morning. I don't know if the powers that be decided that they didn't like the conversation. So let me talk about what you're saying, what you talk about, Karen. The Prime Minister made a statement when she talked about the foreign exchange allocation and going after the banks and talking about the cartels in these cartels with respect to foreign exchange. And she singled out some organizations, some business sectors. And there was one that raised my eyebrow when she talked about the poultry association, the poultry dealers in the country. And when I heard it, I was shocked. Because that was a shot across the bow. Because let me say this, who don't know, let me tell them now. The poultry business in Trinidad and Tobago is controlled and has been controlled for years by the Muslim community. And I found it strange when she made that statement, and because when she singled them out. And with respect to foreign exchange, all that she said, it seems as if what the Prime Minister is trying to do is in line with what at least my perception of what she's trying to do with when she talked about foreign exchange allocations and breaking up the cartels. It seems as if she's looking to reallocate or change the distribution of foreign exchange in the same manner. When you look at her board appointments, I think she's trying to do the same thing. And I'm warning the Prime Minister, be careful of what you try. If it is that is your intent, please change your mind. Please change your mind. Because it is about, I feel, as the caller from Clarksonville talked about says, if you're really on the ground, as I am a lot, you understand the rhetoric on the ground, and that is being spewed by the party to the people on the ground. So this thing that Philip is talking, and when Philip made that comment, that's already been spoken of on the ground, Karen and Sean. That is already been spoken of on the ground, and that is what is so dangerous. That is what is so dangerous. So we have to be, and I'm so glad that Karen, that you are so vigilant and fearless. I see you coming in red this morning. And that's your Matador red.
Don't read it.
Matador red.
Don't read anything into that.
Matador red.
Yes, Matador red.
So, you know, so I am wary of this rhetoric, and Philip and Cook Mayhew are only saying in public what is being said on the ground.
That's true.
That's all they're doing. They're just regurgitating what is being said on the ground. So I really hope things change. Let me say this one quick thing, Karen, and I hope I am incorrect with this. The NIB. In August, I had to make an appointment for a friend in NIB. So I got an appointment for him in September. But some of my friends not tech savvy. They're afraid to go on those online things. So I did. Another one asked me, well, he told somebody else, and I tried from the beginning of September to make an appointment for that other friend. And the system would not, there were no appointments available. From the beginning of September, the system cut off. It takes you straight to January. And then from January to December, there are also no appointments. So there have been no appointments available for the rest of the year. So I tried twice a week, and let me say this, NIB has 13 offices in Trinidad and Tobago, and I could not get an appointment at any one of those 13 anytime. So I took it upon myself, because I said something is wrong. So I called the NIB on Monday and spoke to somebody there. And what they told me is that they have no appointments available for the rest of the year at any one of the NIB offices, no appointments available, which is pretty strange. So I asked her, why it is that I can't even get one for 2026? They said, well, they have closed the portal. And so I said, when the portal is going to be opened again? And the lady said to me, you have to keep checking the portal to see when it's open. I am worried that there's something brewing in the NIB, and I hope I am wrong, but I want to sound the bell so people are vigilant to see if something else is up. Because for me, something is rotten in the state of Denmark with this.
Okay,
have a good day, Karen and Sean.
Thank you. Let me just say this on the Exim Bank. In all, well, I always say in fairness, this is probably I say too often, but in any event, the Exim Bank issue, and actually I wrote an article, sent it on daily newspaper. I know they wanted to publish it, but they did not publish it because it stepped on the feet of the 1%. But everything I said was accurate, and everything I got was from newspaper reports. Nothing that I went, somebody sent me an email, somebody sent me information on the side. No. I am also very careful about that. So my point about Exim Bank, when the Express newspaper published they disclosed who were the major users of foreign exchange by Exim Bank, which came under the Ministry of Trade. What they said, the number one was pharmaceuticals, number two was chicken, and number three was Nutrimix. It was Nutrimix they identified. Now, I went on the Exim Bank website, just to be clear, and they had a normal operations window, and then they set up a special operations window with COVID-19. And you know an Exim Bank is about export, to encourage exports for us to earn foreign exchange. That is the purpose of Exim Bank, to give the manufacturing sector, the non-energy sector support in order for them to be able to produce export, why am I having problems with saying commodities, for want of a better word, in order to earn US dollars? Okay, so this is what I found out. Number one, poultry. Poultry should not have been on any list. On any list. They should not have been on a normal list because they do not qualify, because it is for purposes of export and to produce something to export and earn foreign exchange.
Yes.
Okay? The poultry, as we know, is by and large for local consumption, and the major consumer of that is KFC, that has 60 outlets in this country and has the dubious distinction of having the highest number of outlets per capita in the world. Not just the one in Independence Square that we always talk about, right? They have that. KFC, so just to make it clear. And when you're talking about who has the control, I'm not sure you're right. Because, so they, number one, they should not have qualified for US dollars under the normal operations, nor did they qualify under the special operations, which was started up with COVID-19. So the pharmaceuticals, which was number one, did qualify. And we know who owns all the pharmaceutical business in this country, right? The pharmaceutical business did qualify, but they had a food list. And poultry did not come on that list. So neither on the special windows or the normal windows of Exim Bank did chicken or Nutrimix qualify, because it is Nutrimix bringing it in. Now, Nutrimix brings in for not only the live little hatchlings, but they bring in the, anyway, that and KFC has a special division within Arawak and company. Yes. I tried to find out who owned Arawak. I could not find out. Right? As to who was the CEO, but I couldn't find out who owned it. And they have a special division only to rear chickens for KFC.
There's two lines. One is for KFC, the one is for the rest of the country.
Right, so what I'm saying, but you are being allowed by the former Minister of Trade in this country, who had to have gotten the okay from her former Prime Minister. Now you know why you're in opposition. Now you know why you're in opposition. And everything I'm saying is true. Everything I'm saying, you go, and I challenge everybody, go on Exim Bank mission statement, then go to their normal windows, then go to their special operations window, and you will know that chicken and poultry, which is Nutrimix, do not qualify for foreign exchange, because that is being used for the 60 outlets that are allowed to be in this country, and which is responsible for the NCDs, non-communicable disease, which affects 62% of our population and is the major cause of deaths in this country, 62%. And you know, Dr. Carl Theodore, who is the head of the HU health unit in the University of West Indies, Professor Emeritus, etc., has gone on record several times to say, why did we not have that problem with NCDs? You know, NCDs are the hypertension, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, all this. And they say the main causes is lifestyle, lack of exercise, but your diet, high in sodium, simple carbohydrates, and fats, right? And he said and they did not have that problem in this country a few years ago. You know why? Because we didn't have all these franchises in this country. Right? So, Exim Bank, if the Prime Minister has appointed, I agree with you, I want to see what she's going to do about allocations. But the allocations that the former administration allowed for chicken and poultry did not qualify under either heading. And you want to know why we don't have foreign exchange in this country? If you had a problem with Exim Bank, what do you think was going on in Central Bank? What do you think is going on in central bank? So I agree with her. I just want to see what is going to happen. I agree with Mr. San Fernando. Okay, I want to see what she's going to do. But clearly, they did not qualify. And it is a shame and a scandal in this country that the former government, with the Minister of Trade and that Prime Minister, allowed a situation like that when the country was begging for foreign exchange, when the energy position was so terrible, and you are allowing them, because Exim Bank came under Ministry of Finance, but the licenses to grant 60 outlets in this country came in this country, highest per capita in the world we have of franchises, causing us to have non-communicable diseases, causing the Ministry of, and guess who is providing you with the medication? Just look at this. KFC is across the road from the Port of Spain General Hospital. Getting you sick to get you better, to get you sick, because NCDs are long-term diseases. They are not a disease. You will be on medication for 10, 15 years before you pass away. And who is controlling the fast food franchises? Who is controlling the pharmaceutical? And they're bold about it. They came out and said that they put a proposal to the persons who own these fast franchises, among others, to merge them with the pharmaceuticals, so they are going to be one. And the Ministry of Trade sat down there with the Fair Trading Commission, the Fair Trading Act, and did nothing. You want to know why you're out of business, out of government? You did it to yourself.
We have a comment to get to. I don't want us to miss out on the comment. But yeah, in total agreement of all kinds of positions. The question is, how do we dismantle the racial positions of both the PNM and the UNC? That's the challenge that faces our society going forward. Here's the thing, and I said this when I was trying to figure out why is the PNM acting like how they're acting in opposition right after losing the election. They seem so defiant and arrogant, it didn't make sense to me. I think a lot of the, not all, but a significant amount of the arrogance we see from our politicians, and Mr. Sanders said it about Philip, right? This is the talk on the ground, and the politicians, like, they, for whatever reason, they take what the diehard base says and they roll with it. And it's almost like if, hold on, can you not at least understand that if you're going to repeat what the diehards say, you're only really regurgitating stuff back to them and you're not speaking to the rest of us? And oftentimes, I think someone told me that's like when Dr. Rowley is speaking things that I find absurd, he's like, well, it's not meant for you, it's meant for the base. But on some level, that's the problem. It's almost like if it's an echo chamber of, well, we speak to the base speaks to us, and the rest of the country is like, these people are mad. Because we get statements like what we see. We get, with regards to some of the things that just, it's too arrogant, it's too defiant, it's like they don't care, it's like they have no consideration for the reality of the hardship of other people on the ground, because the base is fine. And if the base is fine, somehow that is an indicator that everybody else is fine. And that's the thing. I don't know why it is that we get the lip service of inclusivity and everybody wins, but we don't actually see politicians saying, well, what about the other guy? Or the people in the middle? Because there are times when, unless you are rich business people, the people in the middle, seemingly they're like the red-headed stepchildren, they're not even talked about. We talk about the opposition's support. The opposition talks about the government supporters, right? Because you know, they'll have a little bit of disparaging remarks here and there. But even the undecided voters, it's almost like they don't exist, right? Much less get any consideration for anything. So that's part of it. Some of the ugliest parts of our politics, as bad as what some politicians say publicly. First of all, we know what they say privately might potentially be even worse, right? But then on top of that, what you see on social media comments on political posts and videos are even worse than that. True. And if these politicians are taking a cue, which I think to some extent they are, from these diehards, it's no wonder that to the rest of us who are not diehard blinders on, you know, so-and-so till are dead. Well, it makes, yes, it seems a little bit nutty at times to us, right? So to eliminate that, I think we need to demand more from our politicians with regards to things like professionalism and being more responsible with what they say, right? Being more careful with what they say.
I'm glad he said it, actually.
Huh?
I'm glad he said it because you know how he's thinking. I don't want you to be
so
careful
yes, you're correct,
at what he's saying, and then, you know, things are happening. And by the way, to answer the gentleman's question, yes, you can. Your board appointment, start with that. CPEP and URP, don't close it down. What's so hard about that? Huh? What's so hard about that?
No, I guess the thing is, what he's saying is, because of whatever that is, right? I think he's not saying that they will solve it for themselves. So how do we now, as the general public, try to make that change? Because here's the problem, right? In theory, it is, well, this party is acting in a way I don't agree with, then I should look at the other party. The problem is some of the behavior that we don't agree with, we see examples on both sides. So then you're left with limited choices. One of the things with the election campaign this go around, and that's why I think they put so much emphasis on we'll do better, inclusivity, everybody wins. Yeah. Notice how that slogan is not quite as, you know, at the forefront anymore. Think about it, right? Notice how they're not hammering that message as much anymore. And notice how now, as Karen pointed out, the disagreement with controversial statements that can be interpreted as to be divisive, the disagreement from the Prime Minister is not quite as strong as we would like to see if it's about inclusivity and building bridges.
Let me just say this to be clear, because I have to also be careful. I do not know to what extent the two statements that Minister Philip Alexander made, one was about Venezuela and India nuking them, when you know that India has a lot of trade agreements with Venezuela. So she could have been condemning that, and understandably so, since she was going to meet Marco Rubio and try to get the Dragon Field started, a bit critical for us. And secondly, the other part about talking to the PNM, the party, that you now don't have the majority. So I'm not sure if her telling me he's out of line and stay in his lane and all that good stuff, I'm not quite sure if she clarified that she was condemning both parties, because it's important for her to do that. There are two statements, two potentially very divisive statements, potentially very inflammatory statements, and it needed her to be very clear that she condemned them both. And that's my concern, that was not that clear. Was it ever? Was he clear about?
No, sorry, there's so many comments.
Okay.
Well, now this is the disagreeing side of it, right?
Yes, that's all right.
Let's try to, there's a lot, so let's try to, I do have a response. Let's just go through them quickly, rapid fire, right? One into the next. You know, okay. So one is saying that you're worse than Alexander. I don't know. I don't necessarily know why. Why must taxpayers foot the bill for the shed? Again, well, to be fair, the shed is saying, well, we are you 2, you are 6, right? I guess let the court sort it out at that point. So is it because Indotrinese is in charge of the court that they're calling for the rent? How long must this continue? We'll give them rent free. Well, here's the thing. That's one of the questions. Why now? Karen, what's wrong with Indotrinese on boards? I'm a Christian Indian and I fully support government appointment on boards. Even if they are Hindu, don't put a rift between Indians of different religions and exist. Well, here's the thing. The problem with that is it's not, you're kind of taking it at face value, right? What's wrong of doing this? Well, in the manner that you do it, it might be wrong, especially if you're not necessarily seeing a follow-up on ideology that you
know
propose.
What we should do to respond to that? Because I think the best thing, I told you that, and I knew it was late notice to say this, but the best way to address that, so that nobody can say that I'm being overthink, put up all the boards.
No, the person is saying they don't care.
Yes, I understand, but they're Indian, aren't they? They are Indian. They are Indian.
I believe so.
No, at the end of the day, it's about race.
No, but here,
oh my God.
But here's the thing is, it starts off from the point of why do we have to replace them all the time?
Yeah, but no, right? You do have to, in all fairness. A board carries out government policy. You do not want a board that is going to undermine and sabotage your policy, because they're the one.
But we are basically just giving into the assumption all boards are so biased that we have to sort them out.
Sean, okay. We don't have time to go into this.
All right,
but what I will say is, the point I'm making is, it is that he's pushing, there are more Indians. He didn't say Muslim Indians, Christian Indians. He said Indians. So that is the point. And all I'm saying, the best way, and the only reason I said Hindu Indians, because that's what I'm seeing. So I am going to ask this WSN, when I come next week, I want to talk on the Exim Bank issue more, on more detail, but I want you to put up a collage, a montage.
But Karen, my point is that the comment is saying they don't care about that.
Of course they, I am, oh gosh,
right,
Sean,
but we're trying to respond to the comments now, so it's not just about...
It's 2 points, Sean.
Right, but we're responding to the comments, so I'm saying that's not responding to the comment. I have to move on. I have to move on. When the PNM was doing it with Afro trainees getting the big slice of the cake. That? Well, here's the thing.
That's what they come back with.
We said that was wrong. We said that was wrong and it shouldn't be done.
Exactly.
Just because one does it doesn't mean it's fine.
And she said she wasn't going to do it.
Now, there's a comment on Clico. I'm not going to read that out because it's about you and Clico.
Oh, gosh.
Right?
Poor things. They just have to go to that.
So, next point. So Karen, how you feed any chicken if you don't buy feed from abroad? That's not the point. The point is Exim Bank is for exports. So
and they're using up your foreign exchange.
That was meant to help deal with exports, because the idea with Exim Bank, from what I understand, is you help set up exporters so that they could then re-earn the foreign exchange.
Exactly. And not only that, you saw where the foreign exchange has gone from 10-point-something billion in 2014 to 4.8 billion in July of this year. Do you understand? It's the foreign exchange I'm dealing with. Why? You know, if you want to counter what I'm saying, I don't mind. I mean, if you come with a good argument, I respect it.
We have another set of comments, right? I'll have to pick and choose at this point. But Ms. Karen, the CPAP workers in 2015 was under 5,000, and in 10 years, PNM turned it into 11,000.
Okay, so what's the point?
Even talking about what the PNM do in 10 years to diversify the economy. She just said, you see, this is the thing, just because you say something about one side doesn't mean that everything has to be in line with some sort of philosophy that we agree with one and we disagree with the other. Because you may have sent this comment before she just said it, but she just went on to say, this is why the PNM got voted out of office. I can't remember what the point she was making, but she was pointed to, with regards to the Exim Bank and how they were playing fast and loose with their own rules.
1%.
So to say that she is somehow for the PNM, let's not get that
Don't get it twisted, as
don't
they
get
say.
it twisted. Karen Shera has done more than her fair share of criticizing the PNM. And it's the same methods and judgment that led her to criticize and still criticize the previous administration that is leading her to criticize this administration when you look about it.
And you know what's the more important thing? Your platform was on, and you got people either to stay home or vote because you promised that you were going to change you were going to change oh God, what is the word I'm looking for? Anyway, you were going to change where Trinidad was going, the direction which Trinidad was going. And what we are seeing is the opposite of that. And Sean, no, Sean, I have to respond to you because it is responding to the person, they're Christian Indian. Listen to me. I said from Alexander, he did not talk about Christian Indians, Muslim Indians, Hindu Indians. He did not say that. He said Indian, so whether you're Christian, Hindu, he wasn't making a distinction. All I did is notice, as other people have drawn to my attention, and I'm bold enough to say it, because I do not have a horse in any race. I'm not beholden to anybody. I think I'm doing as best as I can, communicating so that people will either take it on board or throw it away. But I am saying what I am seeing, and I am saying that when I started looking at the boards, it emerged to myself, but everybody here has a Hindu Indian name. What you want me to do if that's the truth?
The real thing, commenter, is the fact that
so that they're dividing themselves among from the Hindus.
The public is seeing it as divisive.
And not only that, what you are seeing...
Karen, I have to get to some of the other comments to wrap it up.
Him calling it Zain as my grandson.
Right.
No, I have to say this.
No, Karen, we literally have 2 minutes. I have to move on.
All right, next week.
The commenter is also saying, with all respect, the election is not due till 2030. I don't think she's up for politics again. Now, the commenter also said, I'm so happy I migrated out of Trinidad and my family, and Trinidad politics is only personality. I think they're mixing up their points. But the point of this, Mr. San Fernando agreed with Karen in part because of what he's hearing from the ground. What Karen is saying is just a reflection of what a politician said, which is a reflection of what is being said on the ground, right? So I am not going to say what's being said on the ground. If you're not in Trinidad, there's things you might not know. All right, it seems like, I don't know if we broke the machine, but we'll have to wrap up with that.
Next week we'll start,
so,
go back to
folks, have a good day. The conversation will continue. If you feel free to ask Karen more questions if you want to continue the conversation next week. And of course, we'll see you tomorrow. So until then, stay safe. Remember your allegiance to each other and try to be nice about it, guys. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Yeah, but I'm saying.
WESN.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private healthcare affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5477.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Low energy,